Well, good afternoon, and thanks again, everyone, for coming here for this very important discussion of student life on campus. I will say I've been battling with laryngitis the last few days, so I'm a little scratchy. It's actually a lot better today, please bear with me. I'm going to do my best here. So certainly one of the most complex and important challenges facing any institution of higher education is to create a campus environment that encourages students to develop the skills needed for success in the world by learning not only from great faculty, but growing through their experiences with one another and with the world. And this requires a campus that's, on the one hand, welcoming, inclusive, and safe, but on the other hand, offers students the freedom and opportunity to create their own social structures, communities, and activities. So that balance is a tall order, one that demands creativity, thought, and ownership by the entire community. It's not a job for faculty or the administration alone. It's one that requires partnership between students, faculty, staff, administration, alumni, and parents. Now, you've heard me state before that I believe Dartmouth offers the finest undergraduate education in the nation. And with every conversation that I have with a student or a faculty member, I believe this all the more. And I've made clear my commitment that we should remain best in class in our educational mission. And towards that end, in my recent remarks to the general faculty, you heard me envision a future in which student life is characterized by efforts to make a difference in the world, working with peers and faculty on artistic and creative works, academic research, and taking ideas into action through social ventures and business startups. And so in order to do that, we have to ensure that the out-of-class experience is every bit as engaging and rewarding, every bit as empowering as the in-class experience. So my plan is to talk about that aim for about 30 minutes or so. I'm going to give you my thoughts on what opportunities we have to make student life more intellectually engaging, build stronger community, and create a greater variety of social options for our students. I'll turn then to critical safety issues, high-risk drinking and sexual assault and violence. I'm going to talk there about what we're doing, where we're making progress, and how we can do better. And to conclude, I'm going to suggest some ways that you and I can be more engaged as faculty members, positive actions that we can take to make an impact well beyond our classrooms. So at that point, when I'm done with my remarks, we're going to hear from Dean Charlotte Johnson and Professor Rob McClung from the Committee on Student Safety and Accountability about the committee's recommendations moving forward. And then the plan is to open the floor for questions, to hear from all of you, to hear your thoughts and get your input. So let's get going. So in many conversations that I've had with students, faculty, staff, alumni over the past 6 months, and there have been hundreds and hundreds, in many of those I posed the question, if you could do one thing to improve student life at Dartmouth, what would that be? And without doubt, the most common answer I've gotten is to create a greater diversity of social options. Options to build community, to generate a circle of friends, or just to hang out. Some people express this as a concern, that Greek life is too dominant on campus. But I heard this just as often from the staunchest supporters of the Greek system, that the campus would benefit from a richer variety of social options. So let's begin with that challenge. Let's talk about how we can create a more robust marketplace of social opportunities for our students. So, of course, one thing we can do is to sponsor events in our own college facilities. And already the dean of the college staff have been partnering with students to expand college-sponsored events and opportunities. Call Us After Dark is one example. Late-night programming of concerts, comedy, food, as well as numerous other events through the year. And about 3,000 students have attended late-night events at Call Us After Dark this term. And this has prompted other organizations to start programming later in the evening, creating positive social opportunities on campus late into the night. And we're certainly committed to do more in this area. This fall's outdoor concert was a highly successful experiment, and the College Center is making additional grant monies available to students who want to design and host events at the Student Center. So we're going to continue to look for ways using our own college facilities. Investment in college-sponsored events is, of course, it's a good idea, but at the end of the day, it's student organizations that provide much of the social structure for students on this campus. Greek houses and affinity houses are examples, and they're strong sources of community. But of course, other kinds of organizations also provide students the opportunity to build friendships and community. Sports teams, for example, or other student-led organizations like the Outing Club, the Rude Mechanicals, the Dartmouth Entrepreneurial Network. There are hundreds and hundreds of others. Student organizations provide a positive instance of experiential learning, with learning outcomes that can include independence, confidence, and leadership. Student organizations enrich our campus in many ways, and many seek to make a meaningful impact on the region or the world. So my goal for every student organization, from the Outing Club to Greek houses, is that they contribute in as positive a way as possible towards student learning and campus community. And of course, we must set and enforce limits on behavior, but I'm driven by a kind of affirmative philosophy towards student organizations. Our job is to support them to be the best they can possibly be. So in that spirit, a second tactic we can take here is we can be intentional and strategic in building support for those student organizations that advance community building among students as well as intellectual engagement outside the classrooms. So let me give you one example so you have something in your mind about what I'm talking about. So we know that creativity, innovation, and the arts are topics around which many student organizations are centered. So in response to that interest, imagine that we develop an arts and innovation district centered around the Hood, Hop, Black Center, and the new Student Entrepreneurial Center at 4 Courier Place. Already this sector of campus is active, but suppose we take it to the next level. Suppose through deliberate investment of program support, inviting new spaces, and yes, richer venues for food and drink, suppose we make this a compelling destination on campus, a vibrant hub of activity and interaction that pulls thousands of students late into the night. In this vision, of course, spaces matter. The Black Center is already a magnificent anchor. The Entrepreneurial Center, currently being designed by a team of students, imagines much the same, a welcoming place for students with a shared interest in social and business entrepreneurship. And the Hood and the Hop are imagining future forms that would create student-friendly spaces to engage the arts, perform, build, create, and socialize. So my point is that we can be deliberate and intentional in how we support the growth of student organizations. And the Arts and Innovation District is but one possibility. And going forward, I would like to stimulate our campus, students, faculty, and staff, to generate ideas on how we might, through intentional investment and focus, create the infrastructure and direct investment in student organizations that contribute positively to the marketplace of social opportunities for our students. So that's a second possible tactic. Now, compared to some of our peers, to several of our peers, what's really missing from the social mix on our campus are strong residence hall-based options as a source of ongoing community and identity. East Wheelock is one example, of course, but still, in my conversation with students, I've been struck by the number who have told me what strong friendships they built with their freshman floor mates and how they failed to create or maintain tight relationships with their upper-class dorm mates or floor mates. So I see great opportunity to build sustained community within our residence halls. What are our tools for doing this? So certainly programming is one tool. We can create theme-based residence centered around academic pursuits and societal interests, entrepreneurship, STEM and undergraduate research, the performing and visual arts, creativity and design, global scholarship, writing. These can pull students with like-minded interests and attract direct faculty involvement. In addition to faculty involvement, John Cole is working with the dean of the college to think creatively about how graduate students can be incorporated into undergraduate housing. As was recently announced by Mike Wooten, our Director of Residential Education, his team will be starting up 2 to 3 pilot programs next fall. So that's that is a possibility, but a fundamental challenge to building community in our residence halls is continuity. Under current practice, students do not have the option to return to their current residence halls after a leave term. And so why can't they? And the reason we can't afford that luxury right now is that there's no slack in our housing during the fall and the spring terms. And without that slack in housing, we can't assure that there's room in individual residence halls to accommodate everyone who might want the right to return. So I'm persuaded that Dartmouth would benefit from a more balanced enrollment over the 4 terms, so that we can, amongst other things, allow students greater opportunity to remain in a particular residence hall from term to term, to build identity with the residence hall and a circle of friends and a community. So just to give you some idea, right now there's about 4,000 students on campus right now. We are maxed out in our housing. There's nearly 4,000 on a typical spring term. There's about 2,800 in the winter. There's about 1,100 in the summer. It's highly unbalanced. So just imagine if we could create greater balance, we create slack in our residence halls and allow the right for students to return to build identity as a North Mass person with my circle of friends, my community in North Mass. It's worth noting that the D endorsed this idea already in an editorial on October 18th. And I've launched a small study group consisting of faculty, students, and staff to advise me on how we might take full advantage of the D plan, including options that would rise should we more evenly enroll over the 4 terms. So that's kind of the first set of topics I wanted to talk about, building a more robust marketplace of social options. I think that's a key strategy that we need to follow, and I've highlighted 3 approaches to this: continued investment in college-sponsored events, building the infrastructure and program and support for growth of student organizations, and creating greater community within our residence halls. I'm going to stop and get a drink. Hang on a second. Okay, so I'm going to switch gears now and talk about a different topic and a different set of opportunities, and that's how we can build a more welcoming, inclusive campus community. You heard me speak in my inauguration address about the fundamental importance of community to our institution. It is, in fact, the essence of the Dartmouth experience. So this is an area where we must excel. People often ask me, very often ask me, what's changed the most since I was here as a student at Dartmouth? And without a doubt, it's the diversity of the student body. It's a wonderful thing in this transition to a more diverse student body, though not complete, brings us great strength as an institution. But greater diversity only heightens the imperative that we create a more seamless, more supportive, and more welcoming environment of inclusivity on our campus. We do this in many ways already, importantly through the work you do, through your teaching and through our curriculum. But also at the forefront of this effort is the Office of Pluralism and Leadership, OPAL, and they're doing great work supporting individual students and communities within Dartmouth. The affinity houses as well play a key role in this effort. But like all communities, we have much room for improvement. And so we're moving on new fronts this year. In September, the trustees approved construction of a new affinity house, the Triangle House, that will support the LGBTQIA community. And the dean of the college has launched the Intergroup Dialogue pilot program this year. For those who are not familiar with this, intergroup dialogue it's a well-established method that brings together students in a face-to-face facilitated discussion on difficult issues of social identity. These dialogues encourage exploration of identity, diversity, and inequity while building skills for social responsibility and action. Currently, on this campus, dialogues are exploring race, sexuality, and socioeconomic class, and the response of the initial students has been very positive, with about 90% of the respondents saying that they would recommend IGD, intergroup dialogues, to their peers. Intergroup dialogue is a strategy proven to work through rigorous research. That research, much of it done at the University of Michigan, in fact, shows that students come away from an IGD experience with a greater commitment to social responsibility, reduced stereotyping, more complex thinking, better communication, and conflict resolution skills. And next year, the Institute for Writing and Rhetoric will incorporate IGD experiences in their 4-credit course, The Rhetorics of Race. And you can help. As the IGD program expands to larger student populations, I'd ask you to become personally interested in its success by nominating students to participate in an intergroup dialogue or even consider becoming a facilitator yourself. So as I said, I think IGD may have even originated at the University of Michigan. It was certainly a very large and active program there, and the research showed that it had very profound impacts. So let me turn now to challenges, and particularly let me talk about some of the student safety issues that our campus, like others, confronts. Two of the most pressing are high-risk drinking and sexual assault and violence. So let's admit that these problems are humbling. They favor no campus or region. They bedevil virtually every college and university in the nation, as well as communities across the land. They're persistent, having continued unabated for decades, despite many thoughtful and creative attempts at solution. They are truly amongst the most urgent and complex challenges that our nation faces. Now, I say that not to diminish our interest in taking them on. Indeed, that's what great colleges and universities do. They take on the world's most important, most vexing issues. And in doing so, as members of the academy, there are certain things we value. We demand rigorous research and evidence-based practices. And we value practice, the insight and wisdom of those who have been in the trenches, working on the problems, employing strategies that both fail and succeed, and then using these real-world results to inform their research. So with that as a backdrop, let's talk about high-risk drinking, a problem that touches an estimated 4 of 10 college students nationwide. At Dartmouth, this is an area where we've been particularly active, looking for collaboration and evidence-based approaches. One of the most promising approaches we are employing is the BASICS program. BASICS is short for Brief Alcohol Screening and Intervention for College Students. This is not our program. This is a program that was developed in the late 90s at the University of Washington. And it's based around a motivational interviewing and the concept that no student wants to have an alcohol problem. So BASICS consists of having a student do a 20-minute online assessment of their alcohol use, followed by a one-on-one coaching session. Then there are follow-up sessions 3, 6, and 12 months later to see how they're doing. And rigorous research conducted at multiple institutions has demonstrated the effectiveness of BASICS training. And that was one of the things that brought it to our attention and made us want to implement it here. Dartmouth initially started BASICS in 2011, reaching out to students who had been cited for drinking violations. As of December 2012, results at Dartmouth have mirrored those found in national studies. Within 90 days of that first counseling session, students had significantly reduced their alcohol consumption. The average number of drinks during their heaviest drinking episodes went from 8 before BASICS down to 4 3 months later. The average number of drinks per week went from 8 down to 5. The average number of drinks per occasion dropped from 4 to 2. So we've grown the program now well beyond students who have had alcohol issues. Under Harry Shee's leadership, athletics has been an important partner in this effort. Through their peak performance program, they've initiated basics training for all student athletes before any alcohol issues have ever occurred. Undergraduate advisors are also going through basics this year because they play an important role in referring our students. To date, approximately 1,300 sessions have been held on our campus. And our objective is to expand basics training more broadly even than that. Beyond basics, other things have been done. We've sharpened our focus on first-year students. In terms of high-risk drinking, we know that they are a particularly vulnerable population. Historically, about half the medical transports for alcohol have been first-year students. So we've worked with them on social norming, helping them learn more about the social scene at Dartmouth before they land in it. To do so, we've reformed the training we provide incoming students. Through an online program prior to their arrival on campus, they're given information, actual facts, to correct misperceptions about how much their peers will be drinking when they get to Dartmouth. Many come with the misperceptions about how much their upper-class peers are drinking. It's the college keg party mythos. But these are smart kids, and once they see the actual data, we know that they recalibrate their own sense of what's acceptable. The Greek Leadership Council and the Interfraternity Council have been important partners in this effort, and I commend them as well for their experiment this year to keep freshmen out of the fraternities through homecoming weekend. And as I mentioned, Dartmouth has enhanced late-night social options through Call Us After Dark. And members of the Green Team, these are students who monitor events where alcohol is being served at the request of the party's host. The Green Team is also another tactic that's been successful in intervening in high-risk drinking situations. So those are some tactics we've employed, but of course what you want to know is what's the effect. So in 2011, Dartmouth made a commitment to reduce the number of medical encounters for high blood alcohol content, that's BACs above 0.25, a potentially harmful level of intoxication. In the 2 years since, we've seen dramatic progress, actually. The number of encounters went from 80 in 2011 to 61 in 2012 to 31 in 2013. Well, how about this year to date? How are we doing this year? So what we can do is we can look at medical encounters for excessive BACs in the months of September and October only over the last 4 years. And those numbers, just September and October only, have gone from 29 in the fall of 2010 to 18 in the fall of 2011 to 18 in the fall of 2012 to just 5 this fall, the fall of 2013. So that's, definite remarkable progress. And I want to note, in case you're wondering, the rate of good SAM calls has remained stable during that time. So it's not that students are all of a sudden reluctant to call for peers who they think need help. Those calls have remained at the same levels. But the actual incidence of dangerous blood alcohol content levels are down, indicating that students are more controlled in their drinking. So on high-risk drinking, I believe that our efforts are showing progress. We're appealing to students, we're appealing to their decision-making, their intellects. We're giving them the tools to evaluate their own drinking, and in turn, they're choosing to drink more responsibly. And the numbers are bearing this out. So we can't take our foot off the accelerator. We have to continue this. We have to keep at it. I'm not here to declare victory or anything like that, but I am here to say that we're trying a lot of things, and they're having an effect. So that's good news. Let's turn now to sexual assault and violence, which is a national tragedy, as you know, afflicting an estimated 1 in 4 women nationwide. We know that it's a widely underreported crime. National data shows that only 1 in 10 rapes are reported. And we know that this is a complex and a persistent problem. Despite many efforts within many communities across this country, over a period of years, the frequency of sexual assault has been undiminished for the past 40 years. So do we have work to do at Dartmouth? So on that, let's be completely clear. To have even one sexual assault on campus is one too many. And so yes, we need to be unified as a community in taking responsibility for this issue and making it clear that sexual assault will not be tolerated on this campus. So important efforts are underway already. And I'm energized by the idea that Dartmouth can be a leader, can actually model practices that make a difference in preventing sexual assault on residential campuses. So let me begin on the prevention side, talking about the work we're doing with a nationally recognized expert in the area of sexual violence. Dr. Jen Messina, a clinical psychologist and director of training and development at the organization Green Dot. I first heard about Jen when I was back at Michigan, actually, because I used to meet from time to time with the director of Michigan's sexual assault program, Holly Ryder-Milkovich. And in one of those meetings, Holly told me that if I really wanted the nation's expert on sexual assault prevention on college campuses, I should talk to Jen Messina at Green Dot. So I cold called Jen and introduced myself. And in talking with her, that's when I found out that she was actually already involved at Dartmouth, helping us develop the DBI program. So Jen has worked with a number of universities, nonprofits, major corporations, the military, and others. She's a passionate believer in research-based approaches. She will tell you that many kinds of common sense approaches to prevention, like raising awareness, have been shown through research to have virtually no effect. Jen is helping us think through programs and initiatives that will lead to broad-based community mobilization against sexual assault and violence, a method that has been shown to have a positive effect. And one approach that we've been implementing at her advice is bystander intervention training. The idea is to train a critical mass of members of your community on how to intervene as active bystanders. In other words, how to identify when a social encounter is likely to lead to an assault, and then equip the bystander with tools and methods to intervene. Jen helped us craft the Dartmouth Bystander Initiative, or DBI, based on that approach. So training began this past summer, and the initiative has been embraced by the athletics department, the Greek Leadership Council, and the Students' Assembly. So far, more than 600 leaders within Greek houses, athletes, including the football and rugby teams, and more upper-class students have participated. So about 600 students have gone through the bystander training, with more than 150 students completing the more advanced 6-hour leadership training program. The feedback from the training is extremely positive. So far, 99% of the participants in the program report that they would recommend bystander training to their friends. And this is key because participation across all the various sub-communities on campus is essential to have a truly effective investment in getting in front of instances of sexual assault. The hope is to see about 800 students receive further bystander training by next summer. Beyond prevention, we've also been active on improving mechanisms to report sexual assault, support for survivors, and enforcement accountability processes. We've expanded the staff dedicated to preventing sexual violence and supporting students who experience it. The Sexual Assault Awareness Program is in the process of hiring a survivor advocate who will provide direct support to survivors. They're currently interviewing finalists. We've dedicated a special investigator position within S&S to address sexual assault complaints. And Charlotte and her team are working on improvements to the college judicial system that will create a more specialized process with a more highly trained judicial panel to hear these highly complex cases involving sexual assault. We continue to seek out the best ways to organize and staff our system of prevention and response to be most effective. So we've had help from many corners. I want to commend the work of COSA, the COSA group, which you're going to hear their report momentarily, but also the Greek Leadership Council, which put in place a policy on sexual misconduct, and the Student and Presidential Committee on Sexual Assault for their thoughtful and broad-based recommendations to campus as well as their continued work in this area. Because that is the approach that we need to take. We need to take broad-based community mobilization. Jen Messina met with the Board of Trustees of Dartmouth in September for 3 hours. She told them that Dartmouth is doing as much or more to combat sexual assault than any other elite college or university. And our efforts have in fact been noticed by others. Recognizing our leadership position, David Lisak, another leader in the study of sexual assault on college campuses, has asked us to co-host a conference with him on strategies for the future. So being a leader is great, but making real tangible progress is what it's all about. And we've begun the programs, we put them in place, and I am optimistic. We have a campus, I believe, that's galvanized around this issue. We are tapping the nation's best experts to help design our approaches, and we have an amazingly dedicated set of student leaders, including leaders of the Greek community, staff, and faculty who are focused on this. I would caution as we move forward over the next couple of years that if we're truly effective in our efforts, we may well see reported numbers go up before they fall, as reporting becomes more accurate and survivors feel hopefully freer and more encouraged to reach out. It's something worth remembering, because what it's telling us is that we need to be patient with our efforts, even if the numbers appear initially to be increasing. My commitment is to keep our efforts sustained, to keep this issue front and center, because the cost of failure in this area is simply way too high. So let me pause again. I've spoken now about my interest in creating a greater variety of social options for our students and some strategies we might follow. I've spoken about ongoing and new efforts to improve climate inclusivity. And I've spoken about the efforts that we're making to work on student safety issues, ones that seem to be having a positive effect in dealing with high-risk drinking, and ones that show promise in the area of sexual assault and violence. Let me conclude by talking about some ways that we as faculty can be better engaged. First of all, nominate students for the intergroup dialogues and consider becoming a facilitator yourself. Second, encourage students to engage in the full bystander training, the full DBI training. We've discovered that nominations from a respected faculty member actually increase the student's willingness to participate in the longer 6-hour DBI leadership training. Charlotte's team is working to develop training for faculty and staff on how to be a first responder to a sexual assault. In other words, how to advise a student, a survivor, how to direct them when you are the first person that they confide in. So consider volunteering for that training. Become more involved in student organizations, particularly those that provide experiential learning for students in an area of your scholarly interest and expertise. Help develop programming for the new theme-based residence halls as we begin to put those online. And help us with the instructional implications of bringing greater balance to enrollments, because this will require some rethinking about the timing of when we're offering courses, and you can help with that. But most importantly, we need your support. Support the efforts we're making and the approaches we're taking. In all your interactions with students, make it clear that you care about safety and inclusion, that this is a campus that will not tolerate sexual assault, that you expect them to make responsible choices about life on this campus. Improving student life is a difficult, complex undertaking, and we sure need to be all rowing in the same direction if we're going to be making progress. So from my perspective, today is an important starting point, a chance to begin discussions with all of you, the faculty. So thank you for listening. I'm now going to turn it over to Charlotte and Rob, and then we're going to be back after they report out to take questions and comments. So thank you.